Rolling. Hey y'all, I'm Jared Lees and I'm a photographer from the Akron, Ohio area. Today we are going to talk about one of my favorite things in photography, wide angle portraiture. All the shots that I did for this video were done with a 21mm lens, but I believe most people consider anything 35, 28, 24, anything less than 35 is considered a wide angle lens. Although I would argue that a 35 is a normal focal length. But let's just dive into it and talk about some reasons that it's cool to use a wide angle lens for portraits and maybe some tips along the way for how you can use one. So the first reason is to tell more of the story, show the environment, put your subject in a place. For these first two shots, I've got Rhapsody Monique under a bridge, covered in graffiti, and I used a wide angle lens to show more of that area. In this second shot, I used it to show the scale, and it just tells more of the story. Same thing with this next shot with my buddy Holbrook is, I could take a picture of Holbrook, but then you wouldn't know he was a drummer. But if I took a picture of him behind his kit, and we got a fun, interesting portrait at a gig in 2 seconds. All right, so the next reason that I love wide angle lenses is when you're in tight spaces and you want to get all of your subject or more of the environment in your shot. I can't tell you how many times I've had my 50 with me and I've been back against the wall trying to get as much in as I could, and I just couldn't get what I wanted. So this, once again, with a 21mm, and I didn't have a whole lot of room, but I was able to get the stairs and the leading lines of the railings and frame her in this window here, and still get all of her in the picture. And I think it just made for an interesting and kind of fun shot. All right, we can't talk about wide angle lenses without talking about distortion. Some people hate it, but I love it, and I think you should embrace it and use it to its full potential. It can give your shot energy, like this shot here with my buddy Andrew. I shot it a little bit slanty, and that's a technical term, by the way. I got really low and close to his hand so that his hand would appear larger in the frame. All lenses, whatever's closest to the lens is going to appear larger than what's farther away from it, but you can use that to effect with a wider lens, and the wider the lens, the more that exaggeration of distance and scale will be. So his hand here is larger than it would normally be, and his arm is larger, but it also leads up to his head and kind of just creates energy because it's kind of off axis and just kind of makes it look like a funner, livelier shot. You can also use it for comedic effect. It's not super flattering to get this close to a person's face, but for my dog, I thought it was super fun. This is Lyle. He's a beagle, and he eats all of the butter. But I shot this wide open, and I would try and replicate it with a greater depth of field maybe sometime. But for this shot, I shot it wide open and focused on his eye, and his nose here is just massive. He's normally much cuter than this. Same thing with this shot. This was one I took right after I got this lens that I'm using. I got to as close to a mirror as I could to take the picture, and the lens hood and the writing on the lens are in focus, and large and right in your face. But my head's back here and out of focus and tiny, and my hands are all kind of distorted. My fingers look maybe longer than they would normally look, because I was closer to the lens. So it's a cool way of making your image look kind of out of place or surreal, if you will. Just a fun thing to do. All right, the next reason I love a wide angle lens is the hero shot. If you get really low and really close to your subject and aim up, it exaggerates the length of their body, it makes the legs look long, and as you go up, they get a little bit smaller, but they look just larger than life. I call it a hero shot. It's just a really cool thing to do. It's a great thing to do when you've got leading lines in your image. And once again, with wide angle lenses, they distort things. So these leading lines are going to converge a lot more than they would if you were using like a 70mm lens for this kind of shot. This shot would be almost impossible with a 70mm lens. I'm going to say almost because I'm sure you could do something similar, but you know, not quite to this effect. You know, when you do that, it adds energy to a photo, or like an attitude. You know, like for this shot, I shot low and she was in this cool pose, and it just kind of gave it a different attitude to the image, I guess. But you can use it. I love using it out on streets. This one, I used it with Jewel Big Green and almost got hit by a car doing this one. This one, I was on an island, but you know, I didn't have any cars coming to hit me, but it was just a cool way to get this shot. You know, she's almost as big as the buildings because she's closer than them. You know, but I also used the foreground to kind of lead you into the picture, and you know, some center framing here. So she's not totally distorted and totally larger than life, but still a little bit. If I had her closer, these buildings would look tiny, right? The next reason I love using a wide angle lens is getting closer. And you can get closer without making your image distorted and not flattering by keeping your camera on axis with your subject. And also, I'm gonna say not getting too close. If you get really, really, really close, it's gonna distort. But if you keep your camera on axis with what you're shooting, with your subject, you can make a pretty flattering portrait. Like this was shot with this lens wide open, maybe 3 feet away from her, and because she's kind of in the center of the frame, it really didn't distort. If I were to put her closer to the edges, like I would probably get a little more distortion on her face, but I left a lot of space on either side of her to allow for a more natural look. This photo was another variation of one I showed you earlier where I was low, but I shot this one more at like waist level and on axis with her, and it gave a more natural look to her figure. And you know, once again, I was able to be close without being super close, maybe 4 feet, 4 feet. This one I shot on axis, and though her foot is a little bit closer to the lens, it does appear a little bit larger. You know, it's a flattering portrait because the camera was on axis with her and I was using it to create like a full body shot, and also include some of the geometry of the building that we were at in the image. My last reason for liking wide angle lenses is lots of negative space. So for this shot, we were hiking, this is my son. We were hiking in Hocking Hills, and there was this spot where these 2 logs were, and under this cliff, and there's this bit of light here. And then I actually used a flash and took a picture of him so that he really, really popped out. I could have just used the light coming down, but then it would have been a backlit shot, and I didn't want that. I wanted him to really pop, so I had all this dark space here, and I kind of underexposed it before using the flash to give that dark look, and then I added in the flash to fill him in. And then this next shot, I used, once again, we're talking negative space, but this time I used the sky to create negative space. Did a silhouette almost. It's not quite fully blacked out, but this is my other son. He's swinging on the swing set, and you know, I shot low, so it's kind of that hero shot vibe again. And then the sky is, you know, kind of the majority of the picture there, but because it's a blank canvas, what I want you to look at really pops out. So I hope that helps you with your wide angle photography journey. If you like shooting wide angle portraits, you know, send me to your Instagram or leave a comment below and tell me what your favorite lens is. If you have questions about this Thighpoc 21 f1.4, you know, and you want me to make a video about that, let me know in the comments below. If you liked what you saw, you know, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. This is just getting started, and I'm hoping to do more videos like this in the future. So I appreciate it, and I'll catch you in the next one. Thanks for watching.